Hey, and welcome back to the number one podcast in the world, Cellarcast, episode 131. You might notice that this is coming out a little late if you're one of the 25-odd people who hang on the edge of their seats for this podcast, which you should. It's the number one podcast in the world. And that's because I'm lazy. Yeah, I took a break. After Christmas, you know, I finished up that last video. And I said, you know what? I'm taking like 2 weeks off. I'm taking last week of December and the first week of January. That's all me time, baby. And I've been having a good time. But I figured I want to get around to recording this before the end of the year. And also potentially, I might be doing Cat's coming over for our special New Year's Eve stream. We're gonna be live in the flesh, the both of us. So I wanted to get my solo podcast out. We might do something together. I don't know, maybe, who knows. I've been my week has been very relaxed. It's nice. it's been good. I've been working on. I finally got my Tyranids primed. I got a bunch of work done on Mugen. Let me tell you, okay, so I hit the point when I was doing my Mugen, if anyone doesn't remember, I was working on a little Mortal Kombat fan game in Mugen engine using Fighter Factory. And I hit a bit of a wall the first time I talked about it, it was after I think I had like hit a bit of a wall with the movesets. The way I wanted to lay out my characters is I kind of wanted to I'm basically basing the moveset off of or the system, I guess, off of Christ, why is it? Chaos Code. I like how Chaos Code, which is kind of just like anime KOF with 4 buttons. Light, heavy punches and kicks, and proximity normals on the heavy buttons. I like that scheme a lot. I like a little bit of I do indulge in a little bit of proximity normals. I think that I don't like it when everything you play the old KOF games, and they have like close light punches, and you're like, okay, you don't need. We're going a little far with this. We don't need all that. But when you just got a little like close slash and Guilty Gear feels good. Newer KOFs when you hit like that close heavy feels good. I like that, and I like the fact that you get to kind of be a little flexible with the moveset and use a limited number of buttons essentially to fulfill more roles in a character's kit. And I think that's cool. But my problem was everything else I'd done up to that point, just the basic normals before I got into these, close attacks and all that. The basic stuff, I was just taking the existing template character that comes included with Mugen and just removing stuff like sprites and all that and animations and putting in the ones that I downloaded off of MK Warehouse. Thank you so much, guy, whoever runs MK Warehouse. There was nothing in the template for proximity normals, which meant that I had to #learn to code a little bit. That's right. I had to write it myself. And that took a while. And you know what? It was very mentally draining. I was tired by the end after 2 hours of working on it. But I figured it out, and I got it done. I watched a lot of videos. I read a lot of forum posts. Because the thing is, there's no one way to do... Well, there is one way to do a lot of things. But with a lot of other things, there's a couple different approaches that you could take. And... oftentimes, once you understand what you have to do, it's not that hard. It's not that complicated. But getting to the understanding is the hard part. So I got that done, and I felt really good, man. You know, I haven't really picked up a skill in a while, and just learning how to, like, you know, coding, but it's like, you know, Mugen code. You're working within in the engine and the parameters and stuff. I'm not doing some kind of like from scratch C# stuff or anything like that. I'm just doing I'm working within the Mugen system, and even that, to honestly, that's enough for me for the time being. I don't just like, oh, I just love coding, you know? I tried learning how to code a while ago, like many years ago, and I realized it just didn't excite me that much unless I was doing something that, well, now I'm doing something that interests me more, so I'm willing to work with it. As opposed to, like, I don't know, something like video editing. I'll enjoy, like, probably whatever I'm doing, to some extent. But yeah, I felt good. I got command normals working. I got stuff to cancel into each other, and it's really cool. And I'm also running into the programmer experience, which I know it's always been out there. I know that it's always been a thing, but now I'm running into it, and that is that it's like coding. It's a lot like putting out fires in an oil field. Every time, you know, it just kind of never stops. You just never stop fixing problems and making a little bit of progress, and then the thing that you made progress on introduces new problems. So right now, my thing is, most things work pretty well. I'll give myself that. I think I've done a pretty decent job. It's probably pretty inelegant, but I think I did a good job with what I've got so far for this being like my first project. But for some reason, you can cancel everything into the heavy normals, including the heavy normals, which I don't want you to be able to do that. It means you can, like, whiff cancel anything into the heavy normals, and it's I don't like that. I don't want that to work. I don't want it to work like that. So, I don't know why the hell, and I'm like looking at the code, and I'm like, I don't know why this is happening, and only for these two moves. I don't know why it's doing that. So I have to figure that out the next time I go into it. But it's been good. It's nice to just work on something. It's nice to just work on a little project, and like, oh, something I've never done before that's new and makes my brain work in different ways. It's a lot of fun. We're going to quickly get into the comment review. Our first comment comes from Lozy, who asks, are you going to open a hotline where people can choose sexual phrases said with your Eddie Murphy impressions? Yes. Yes, I am. That's going to be my new side business. I'm going to be an Eddie Murphy sex hotline impressionist. That's my new game. In actually completely unrelated news. Do you hear that? Do you hear that? You hear that sound? That's right, guys. It's back. It's finally back. The Blizzard block. And I can't say that with a smile. I can't. I mean, I'm laughing at it right now. But it's not a good thing for it to be back. Maybe it sort of is. If you don't remember, if you haven't been a long-time listener of this podcast, the Blizzard block was a little segment that I introduced that the wonderful Ghostiak Ziku, who also did the intro for the comment review, made that little intro for. And this was way back when the Blizzard sex abuse scandal broke out. And it seemed like literally every single day there was a mountain, you could say a blizzard, of new reports and information about what was going on at that god-awful company. So much so that I literally just called it the Blizzard block, because there was so much every single episode, and it's petered out. We hit the point quite a while ago where we most of the information, there wasn't really any more information left to come out. There wasn't that much. It was, if anything was going to happen, or if anything has been going on, it's been very slow legal proceedings. And I am happy or sad, maybe, to say that we do have some news about one such legal proceeding, and that is, I'm getting this from an ABC News article. Isn't that refreshing in a bad way, to finally read gaming news, technically, from a place like ABC, as opposed to like Kotaku or something? But it's got to be like this. Activision Blizzard to pay $54 million to settle California state workplace discrimination claims. So they're just settling. They're doing the thing that you kind of expected them to do. They're just settling. So, resolves allegations that the maker, that Blizzard, quote, discriminated against women at the company, including denying promotion opportunities and paying them less than men for doing substantially similar work. That was one part of the story that was like so crazy to me, was that part of the investigation found that some of the workplace discrimination was literally that they were just paying women less than they paid men for the same jobs. Like, they weren't even being subtle about it. It was like, really? That too. Okay. Let's see. Yada, yada, yada. Let's get some more quotes. Activision Blizzard also agreed to take steps to, quote, ensure fair pay and promotion practices at the company. Let's see. Where's another one? The settlement agreement declares that, quote, no court or any independent investigation has substantiated any allegations, unquote, of systemic or widespread sexual harassment at Activision Blizzard, nor claims that the company's board of directors and CEO acted improperly or ignored or tolerated a culture of harassment, retaliation, or discrimination. This is the type of thing that someone's going to read, and a real smooth brain is going to say, well, the agreement said that they couldn't find evidence. It was all fake. It was all fake, guys. So what's happening here is, legally, we're dropping the charges, and the punishment is you have to pay a bunch of money to these people, but like, no one's going to jail, even though a lot of people probably should. So we have to drop. That's the punishment. You're paying a bunch of money, which is like nice, I guess. I don't know. It's the kind of thing where it's like, what are you supposed to do? I mean, a lot of those people were fired, to be honest. Like, I genuinely don't think. I have a feeling that a lot of, especially the leadership at Blizzard, has been shaken up over the last 3 years since the allegations came out. I have a feeling that a lot of it has been, a lot of people have been fired and removed, and a lot of changes have been made. I sincerely doubt that like anyone who really did any of that stuff is still at the company. So it's like, well, what else are you supposed to do? You know, you can't undo the past. You can't like take away a horrible experience that someone had. You can just kind of fire those people, and here's a bunch of money, I guess. So it's kind of like it's kind of a Pyrrhic victory, I suppose. I didn't see any statements from anyone who was involved. I don't know if anyone's like at liberty to talk about the payout, but that's what the situation is. I assume there's a lot of mixed feelings about it. But that's where that's at. Also, Bobby Kotick is he's officially out? Yeah, I think he's officially out. And oh boy, am I ready for just tons of dirt to come out on this guy. Bobby Kotick seems like is such a slime ball of a man. Like it's not even like allegedly. He's like a known slime ball of a man. Do you remember when he just because of this story, I was reminded by comments and things of just how much known stuff he's done. Like, do you remember when he threatened to have his secretary killed? Do you remember when he allegedly sexually harassed an airline flight attendant and like got her fired from her job, and I think just paid out some money to her and after she sued him? Do you remember when he hired multiple war criminals and people who like approved torture to work at Activision? Why are there so many people from the Bush administration at Activision? Isn't that weird? Do you remember when he had the pro-torture lady who was like pro Guantanamo Bay water torture, like force-feeding people fucking protein so that they would... It's horrible. You can go read methods of torture that were employed at Guantanamo Bay. It's very disturbing. Do you remember when he hired her and then had her write a letter about how she'd never experienced any sexual harassment at the company, being like a fucking super manager? And then it turned out that she didn't even write that. He wrote it and then said that she wrote it. What the fuck was that about? Oh, I can't wait for all this shit to come out on the horrible stuff that guy's done. I hope that guy never gets a job at anything again. At this point, he's got too much money to really be hurt by anything. But in his memory, this is why I feel like this people like him are why like religions can't come up with hells. Because there's a certain point where you're so frustrated that you'll never be able to get back at someone for something, or that, you know, they really can't be affected. They're completely impenetrable by the system that they've couched themselves in. So you're like, well, I hope there's some like all-powerful just being that eventually sentences them to eternal punishment. That's like, I feel like that he's one of those people. There's like significantly, I wonder if there's like worse people. There are worse people. I don't know why I said I wonder. I know that there's worse people in the world. But like, that's the kind of thing where it frustrates you so much. That's the class of person that frustrates you so much. And that is the last that I will talk about that for right now, because I'm trying to have a good time. I'm trying to have a good time. It's almost my birthday. I'm about to be 22, and all my skin's gonna fall off. I'm gonna molt. Kat and I watched season 2 of Spy Family. We didn't technically finish it. We're like 2 episodes from the finish or whatever. Excuse me. But yeah, we watched most of the second season. Well, she's already watched it. I'm catching up on it. And I don't have a whole ton to say about it. I didn't have like a ton to say about the first season, besides just that I liked it and some of the reasons why. But I do want to point out that while I was watching the second season, I thought of something I said about the first season. And I realized that I was absolutely spot on in my prediction, at least for myself. Now, the second season, like, at a good chunk, like, half of it at least, is taken up by this, like, 4 or 5 episode arc that takes place on this cruise ship. The whole premise, the bit is that Yor gets this, it's a Yor-focused story arc. Wow, there hasn't really been a multi-episode story arc about Yor yet. Yor gets an assignment from her assassination society, I guess, who they need her to protect a lady she's fleeing the country. She's going to a different country. They're doing a transfer over on this cruise ship that she's changed her identity. She and her little baby are they're going to be on this cruise ship, and then during the journey, they're going to do a little exchange. As a boat's going to pass, they're going to drop her off, and she's going to go off to live her new life. Well, it just so happens that Lloyd and Anya win these tickets to go on a cruise on the exact same ship. So they're all there together, and because Yor has this excuse that her work is putting her on assignment there for some kind of a deal. And what if they see me while I'm doing my assassin bodyguard thing? Okay, fun premise. We get the whole family there, except for Bond. Except for my big boy Bond. And there's, for the most part, this arc is very fun. But there's an aspect to it that I kind of predicted, and I remembered predicting it or foreseeing it. So if you recall, the first time I talked about Spy Family, I said, I kind of noticed how in that first season, there wasn't a lot, like Yor was obviously in the episodes, and she got some episodes that were dedicated to her doing stuff, but it was mostly like kind of like house stuff. It was like wife stuff. As opposed, Lloyd has a lot more, the Lloyd focused episodes tend to be more about him doing spy stuff, his real secret job. Yor her episodes were a lot more about the home life aspect. And I was like, and she never really got like an extended thing, even though like multi-episodes, at least 2-episode arc about something that she's doing, or Anya and Lloyd both had those. I'm pretty sure Lloyd, in the first season, pretty sure Lloyd got one. And I think I said that I can see from a writer's perspective, I can see Yor being an awkward character to write around, because it's a really fun idea on paper, but the problem is Yor's assassin job is like too violent for the tone of the show. The show generally it's got like some intense things. Anya has to defuse a bomb. Anya has to stop a terrorist attack. It's got some intense things. But generally, when that happens, and it's very specific to like what's being shown on screen. Like there's that bit in the first season, I think like in the last couple episodes or something, there's this whole thing with Anya, and she gets wind of this bombing plot. Oh my god, a bunch of people are going to die. She has to help Lloyd defuse the bomb without him knowing that she's doing anything, right? I would consider that more of a Lloyd plot, because it's like the spy international politics stuff. I know as a viewer that when Lloyd's doing stuff, it's like, okay, what's the worst thing that I'm going to see? There's going to be a little like, hand-to-hand combat. Some guys might get beat up. They'll have like little anime injuries, like they'll have a little blood on their face, or a nosebleed or something like that. I know that like the bomb's not going to explode, and even if it does, I know that I'm not going to see like a pile of bodies covered in ash, bleeding out and decapitated. I'm not going to see some intense, horrible like war photography shit from Spy Family when there's a Lloyd plot, because it's like James Bond stuff, right? It's never that crazy. And then you get to this Yor plot, and it's like, oh, fun, okay, and there's some serious stuff with like, there's some more serious character stuff, but like when the action happens in the Yor thing, dude, there's a moment where there's a guy shooting a gun into their room from the hallway. He's shooting like a silenced pistol, and Yor throws one of her knives through the wall. It stabs the dude in his head. It goes through his skull, out the other side, through his whole brain, out the other side of his head, and then he gets stuck to a wall. It impales his head on a wall. And I was like, oh, it's like a fucking scorpion fatality from Mortal Kombat. Like, legitimately, just like throwing the chain knives through someone's head or something and impaling them. I was like, oh, God. And it's never like, it's not super duper gory, but it's so gruesome. And I was like, ooh. And it's just for a second, and he kind of moved past it. So it's like, okay, well, all right. And then, you get to this weird point where the climax, really, of that storyline is this big battle that happens on the rooftop of the cruise ship, where Yor has to fight like 30 different assassins and all that. And this is while there's like a little it's so weird. There's like a fireworks show that Lloyd and Anya are enjoying down below, and there's like cute, happy, fun stuff. Anya's going like she's making little noises. They're having like a cute father-daughter thing, and then you're like, that's being cut in, like interspersed with like a dude getting stabbed through the throat and then through the eye, and just like up front. It's like the goriest part of the show, that whole episode. And it's just kind of weird, And I'm like, ooh, it's not falling apart, but it's getting really close to the edge of like, I don't know if this is working. I don't know if it's working. It's just like a little and it really is like what's happening on screen, and it's a visual medium, I think that's important. I think that's important. It's the way that the violence is depicted that feels a little too intense for the show. I'm looking, the show's got like a little blood. It's got a little thing here and there, people getting roughed up or a little bit hurt, and that's like fine. That's like the tone the show has set. I feel like there's like a bar. The Yor plot line kind of like pushes it a little further than I wish it had, which is unfortunate. Not to say that it like ruins the show, and not to say that it's bad or like a bad episode. It's just like, I'm just noticing it. I'm more just talking about it than I am criticizing it, because I still enjoyed a lot of the second season. I think there was a lot of fun antics. Like, the antics are as generally as good as ever in the show. Anya's still cute. It's still fun to see, her and the Lloyd and Yor interacting in different little grouping. Like, it's fun to see Lloyd and Anya doing father-daughter stuff, and him, like, his whole thought process of like, he takes everything too seriously, and her also like trying to distract him so that she can go help Yor. And that moment where he's trying on clothes at the store and he walks out and he looks like someone who just went to town on the Tekken 7 character customization fucking menu. And like, that stuff's fun. I thought that was really funny. And there's a lot of, there's still like plenty of, I would say the second season is probably about as good as like the first one. In most ways. It's just like, this interesting, it's a difficult character to write around for the kind of show that it is. And I'm almost curious how it's depicted in the manga, for instance. Because I know that there can be, so, okay, here's a little personal anecdote. I remember I was on like Reddit and I saw a post that was like, have you ever watched one scene from something and been totally sold on it? And they had posted, this is around the time Invincible came out. I guess if you spoilers for Invincible, I guess. Skip to the next segment. It'll be time-stamped. But and I already kind of knew what Invincible was about. But like the end of the first episode is Omni-Man, the guy from Mortal Kombat, just killing like the whole stand-in Justice League group. And that's like a big twist. Wow, shocker, kind of thing. And they had just posted as the example of that thing, I guess, this experience that they've had, that they felt so compelled, they loved it so much, that they felt compelled to post it to Reddit and ask people for other examples that were similarly strong for them, other experiences where they'd watched something and been like, damn, I'm totally strapped in for this show. And I watched that scene with no context. Well, I had enough context. I know it's like at the end of the first episode. I kind of figured that throughout the episode, you're kind of sold on, oh, he's a normal guy. And then in this last scene, it's like this huge departure. And oh my God, it's like, that's like the twist. And I remember watching that scene and like, I never wanted to watch the show. I didn't want to watch the show. I didn't really care for it. I wasn't that interested by it in the first place. Someone in the fucking comment section is going to try and sell me on Invisible. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it from you. That scene made me never want to watch the show ever. I was so absolutely turned off by how it felt so needlessly. I feel like there was it felt tasteless. I feel like there was such a better, I don't know, so fucking like miserable. Just like, oh God, I really felt really bad after watching that. And like, maybe it's supposed to do that. Maybe it's supposed to, but it made me feel bad in a way that I really didn't like. I don't know how to describe it. It felt like overindulgent in like in deep misery and suffering, and that felt weird. Like there was too much detail in it, in like a lot of the murder, and it felt weird. It made me feel kind of gross. And I was so turned off by it that I went and I actually checked out. I tried to find the original scene from the comic, and I saw the original scene from the comic, and I thought that it was done way more tastefully there, where you get like a lot of it's like you're not seeing the whole thing. There's like silhouette from what I recall. And then you get like a big shot of him in the middle of this like massacre essentially, where you can see just enough. You see just enough to understand how brutal and violent it is. But it isn't like a fucking, that scene it's like what, at least 2 minutes or something of like fucking a close-up of someone's face as their skull is getting crushed and their eyeball is popping out and they're screaming in misery that goes on for like 10 seconds. I don't need to see that. I really don't have to watch that. As they're like begging them to like, I feel weird even talking about it now. And like maybe if my first exposure to that was that scene, I would be more interested or whatever. But yeah, watching it in the animation, hugely turned me off. I was like, if this is the way that the show handles that stuff, I don't know. It I don't like it. That's why I wonder, because stuff like that can get changed in that. We were talking about Spy Family. Stuff like that could be changed in adaptation. I'm saying it again. I'm saying it again for the people with the bad memory. Do not try and tell me about Invincible in the comment section now. I don't care. Someone's gonna do it anyway. So I don't know. It could have been handled differently in the comic or in the manga, and they just didn't. I don't know. They just chose to adapt it in this way, or it was just easier. Because sometimes stuff doesn't work. You can communicate something very differently in a still panel, and it might be a little weird to do that in motion, in animation. especially if something's kind of stylized or the presentation is a little stylized. Unless you really commit, like the Scott Pilgrim movie really commits to capturing the pacing and the sort of presentation style of the comic, which plays around with, I don't know, it plays around with visual pacing very well. And the movie really leans in on that. But if it's just something that's like, oh, every now and again you get a kind of stylized way of showing something in your manga or your comic, and then like, how do you, are we can't really like full commit for the visual, like visual, they're both visual. If you're making the anime, then for instance, well, we can't like fully commit because there's not enough to fully commit to, but there's just like this one or two shots that's, kind of like this. I don't know where I'm going with that. It might be difficult. Hey, speaking of things that go all in on their presentation, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and specifically right now All-Star Battle R. So Kat's friends chipped in and got me that like Steam card because I hate spending money and I hate money. So there was a sale and I bought JoJo ASBR, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, All-Star Batman and Robin. That's what it stands for. And also Final Fantasy XII, because I've been meaning to get that for forever. I hear it's really good. I would like to play it sometime soon. And I probably not on stream. I don't know. I've realized I put some more time into Dark Souls 3 off stream, and I think I realized I just don't like playing a lot of single-player games on stream. Unless I've already played them before, if it's something like Blood, in which case I can kind of... Because when I play something on stream... Okay, when I play a single-player game, I really like to go at it on my own pace. Sometimes I like to listen to something in the background. I don't know. I like to... It's a very, like, personal experience for me. Mentally, like, the way that I experience stuff and process it and what I might mess around doing. And I don't know. There's, like... When I'm on stream, there's, like, a whole bunch of other stuff that I have to think about. Like, talking to people, commentating. Like, it takes a lot of extra brain power to commentate that you might not realize if you've never tried streaming before, but it really does. Now it's like now it's like easy because I'm used to it, but for a while, like, and the brain power is still necessary, but it's like stuff that I would rather reserve in a lot of cases now for like thinking about the game itself. I feel like my experience with a game, if I'm streaming it, is a little bit unnatural. And that's why I think I don't know. I don't know if I'm as big of a fan of streaming a game, like a single player game that's for the first time. I don't think streaming it. Maybe not from now on, just because I don't like it, and it's a weird experience. Compared to kind of how I like to enjoy games. Now, if it's like something I've already played before, that's different. Or if it's a multiplayer game, which is, I don't know, it's really fun to play fighting games with on stream, especially against viewers and stuff. That's a lot of fun. And that's, what's funny? I think fighting games are like better for me to stream because I get way less toxic. I get way less frustrated when I play on stream. Number one, because like I really don't want to get, it's so like, I don't want to look fucking pissed off on stream. Like, I don't like that. Unless it's in kind of like a funny way. But if I'm I don't want to get like, it's never fun. I don't know. Because I don't think I'm like funny. I don't want to do that, And I think I also it doesn't look good, Like, it doesn't look good to be all fucking pissy at a video game live on camera. But when I play against people on stream, I'm usually I'm a lot more, I don't know, accommodating. Like, especially if it's someone, like, it's so hard to get mad at someone who's a viewer, you know? It's like, it's hard to get mad at someone who is, like, typing in chat or something. It's hard to get that mad, especially when there's, like, no stakes to it. No real stakes, besides looking bad at whatever game I'm playing. I don't know. I find that I'm more oft to like compliment people. That is so important for staying, keeping a good mindset playing games, is complimenting your opponents. Dude, that will, like, if you can go from like, fucking really, I got anti-air, if you just say, oh, nice anti-air. Good anti-air, good reaction. Dude, it totally flips your mindset. It's like, I figured that out just like naturally streaming fighting games. That's my pro tip. If you get really fucking mad playing video games, try just experimenting with and don't discount someone for having like a cheap strategy or something. Be like, okay, well, I don't know, you're doing the thing that works. Just try to get into, like, reframe it as your opponent doing something well, you know? Like, oh, good job. And it doesn't have to mean that you did something poorly necessarily. I don't know. It helps a lot. In any event, I was talking about JoJo ASBR. That game's a lot of fun. Damn, that game is really fun. It's got a great, huge roster. It feels very, I don't know, it feels good. Like, it feels really intuitive to play. I use the word intuitive. I'm really big on that word recently. Like, I play it, and a lot of characters, at least, that I try out, because I've just been trying out a bunch of different characters on the roster, and just training mode and all that, and just, like, excuse me, like, checking out, like, oh, does this work? No, that doesn't work. Does this work? Oh, this works. I don't know. It a lot of things just kind of make sense that they work together. It has a really fun combo structure that's like really easy. It's just like a regular anime, you know, chain cancels and all that. But it's good, and it feels satisfying. There's so many characters there's lots of like really cute little references. The movesets are fun. There's like, I don't know. It's kind of funny because it takes a lot of cues from Heritage for the Future. The 97? Yeah, 97 Capcom JoJo fighting game. Like, it takes a lot of cues from there. A lot of characters from that game have, the ones that reappear in this game, have like, oh, so there's a weird thing where they have these like little similarities where, like, well, for one thing, literally like the meters of both games are the same, with like the heart, the heart motif. Jotaro in Heritage for the Future. So if I was picturing Jotaro, right, I would imagine Jotaro as being a very like brawler type of character, because his whole deal, the way that he's written, is that he can, if he gets within range of you, like within the range of his stand, within range of Star Platinum. Star Platinum is so fast and so strong, it can basically beat anyone instantly in just like a fist fight. It'll just destroy you. The challenge for him, and what's good about the better fights in Part 3 that involve him, is he has to get in range. That's his obstacle. He actually has to get in range. He's written like a fighting game character, you know, like a close range, like Juggernaut type of character. He's really he has to figure out who the opponent is, and then he's got to figure out how their ability works, and then find the opportunity to get in range, and then he wins instantly. And that's kind of how I would imagine he would work in a fighting game. And then in Heritage for the Future, they give him this very interesting, weird design where he's like he like has that aspect to him a little bit, but he's also like a set play character, because he has Starfinger, and he has Starfinger in his moveset, and it's an unblockable that has like this really long startup time, where you knock someone down and then do Starfinger on their wake up to like do a setup or something. And it's like a very, I don't know, it's a weird direction to take Jotaro in. He has that same design. It's literally the same moves. A lot of his moves in a lot of characters have like very similar movesets. Like specifically the Part 3 characters between this game and Heritage for the Future, like clear inspirations. Yeah, I don't know. It's just the way that every character gets captured. It's you could tell that it was made by people who were fans of the series, which is great. I like it. It's a lot of fun. Like I can't play it online because it's just I don't think there's anyone playing, and there's just the lag. But man, it is a really fun game. It's I was curious, like, how similar is Lisa to Rose? Because Rose from Street Fighter is just Lisa. And not at all, actually. Lisa's like a Rekka character, like a Rekka mix-up character, which is interesting. There's just weird little, like, I don't know, fighting game references. Like, Weather Report, weirdest thing. Weather Report has Necro's DP from Third Strike with, like, the electricity. And then he also has Hulk's, I think it's Gamma Charge is the name of the move. It's the one where Hulk charges forward, and then you can do an additional follow-up in, like, he has 3 different directions that he can charge, and then he can do another charge in any of those 3 directions. I was like, that's an interesting 2 moves to adapt for this character. Yeah, it's a good time. It's a lot of fun. I know there were people who were a little miffed that Josuke, Part 8 Josuke, was not reworked in some way to reflect his, like, final, I guess you could call it the final Part 8 moveset, or better reflective of, what he does across the whole of Jojolion. Excuse me. Excuse me again. I don't remember Josuke, honestly. That was one of the things that I remember being kind of disappointed with as Part 8 went on. So if you didn't know how the timeline worked out, the original game came out in 2013, and at that time Part 8 of JoJo was only like 10, 12 chapters in, maybe. And there just was not a lot of material to work off of with Josuke's moveset. Excuse me. I get the feeling that he was probably developed last, and they probably had a lot of notes from Araki about stuff that he was plans he had for the character, ability-wise. So, by the time the game came out, he was relatively reflective of what was out at the time. Now Part 8's done, and I remember Josuke not really using his ability in that many more ways throughout Part 8. I remember he takes eyesight from people, he takes friction, he takes sound, he takes moisture. And kind of everything else is just he uses the bubbles to move things around. That was how I remember most of Part 8 going, and I was a little disappointed with that. Because Soft and Wet is such a cool ability on paper, and then I feel like Araki really started running out of ideas for it. I feel like it should have been Soft and Wet on paper. It sounds like it should be like Gold Experience. Like, you hear Gold Experience and it's like it can turn non-living things into any living thing he wants, roughly, Probably not like real full people, but he can, like, you hear that and it's like, oh yeah, there's a moment where a character gets poisoned and Giorno turns a brick into a snake and uses the snake to create an anti-venom for the poison. You're like, that's so fun and weird. He turns a life preserver into a sea animal and rides it to the shore. He turns a bullet into like a tree. And they shoot a fucking helicopter with the bullet, and then the tree, he like activates his ability on the bullet, and it like makes the the helicopter like the tree attaches to a building. It's fucking crazy. And Soft and Wet just kind of like has bubbles, push things. I was like, oh man. But it made me I was watching some videos by a YouTuber, one of my favorite, probably my favorite JoJo YouTuber, a guy named Hamon Beat. And he is probably most well known. He does a lot of things. He does, chapter reviews. He does, news updates if there's something JoJo related. Stuff like that. But really, what he's probably best known for is a series called Debunking Araki Forgot, which is there's a famous meme about, oh haha, Araki forgot this, and it kind of started as a meme and like a joke, kind of referring to the interesting way that Hirohiko Araki writes his manga. But it kind of evolved into people like not getting the joke, and a lot of them taking it seriously and thinking that Araki genuinely like forgets a lot of stuff, and that there's tons of quote-unquote plot holes in JoJo. There are some plot holes, and there's things that don't make sense. It's been running for like 35 years, and Araki is a mortal man, as far as we know. Again, people joke that he's a vampire. But there are plot holes, but a lot of the things that people say are just misunderstandings and stuff like that. And so the debunking series is going through each part, and then there's a bunch of extra videos debunking common myths and misconceptions and stuff like that, and just weird questions. And it's a fun series if you've actually like read or watched all of JoJo, and you can, because some of them are like kind of easy to misunderstand, like, oh, I can see how someone might have gotten confused about something. Some of them are kind of stupid. Like, there was a guy, like, in part 8, there's a moment where a character grafts a tree branch to another plant. And there was a guy who was saying he's like, dude, how did he do that? That's just like, Araki just made some shit up? And Hamon Beat has to explain that tree grafting is a real thing that exists. And it's like a technique that's been around for like probably over like thousands of years at this point. How old is tree grafting? How old is tree grafting? The practice of tree grafting can be traced back 4,000 years to ancient China and Mesopotamia. Awesome. Yeah, so it's stuff like that. Some of them are interesting because they're actually problems that were introduced in the anime. And you're like, oh, very rarely the anime will include something that someone probably thought was a very minor detail, but it actually kind of messes up the continuity. Like apparently in the manga, there's no lock on the outside of Dio's coffin. It locks from the inside, or something. But they added one in the anime. They added a scene of like the sailors picking up the coffin out of the ocean and breaking the lock off, and it creates some problems with some inconsistencies. If you want to see the worst, the actual worst thing that Araki is bad about in his writing, he has a video about timeline inconsistencies. Oh my god, Araki cannot fucking get his calendar straight. Oh my god, that's like the worst thing about it. And it's relatively inconsequential. But it is really funny to know, to just realize how many, like, he can't keep fucking Tsurugi at the start of part 8. He wrote him down as being 2 years old. And it's like, did you not have the plan for him to be 9? Did you not have the plan for him to be like a speaking, walking around character? You just made him a 2-year-old baby from the beginning? But his videos inspired me to go back and reread part 8. And I guess there'll be, I don't know if there'll probably be spoilers for part 8 a little bit in here. It's literally probably like 10 years away in terms of getting an anime adaptation. I'm not even joking. So if you really care, if you're an anime only and you really care that much, I doubt you'll even remember what the fuck I say here. You know, if you really want to wait. So part 8 was it. The reason I decided to go back and reread it, specifically Jojolion, which is weird because it's the only part with JoJo in the title. Well, now Jojoland's part 9 has JoJo. Is because it's the only part that I've read as it was being released. Every other part of JoJo was already finished when I read them. So I kind of just read them in big marathons of a couple days, depending on how long they were. Because the thing about JoJo's is that when you're reading it, especially like once you get to like part 7, man, everything else just seems so much worse. And I have like 10 pounds of change in my wallet, and it's just like rocking back and forth on my table, right on my desk right now. Like I cannot close my wallet. I have so many fucking coins. I have no idea. I should count how much money I have in coins just in my wallet. It makes me look like I have a lot more money on me than I really do. Man, that would be so disappointing if I was like a mugger and I tried to rob Taigen, and we're speaking in the third person now, and he gave me his wallet, and I was like, oh yeah, there's so much money in here, and it's like fucking $5 in pennies. I'd be so pissed. That would be a great prank. That would be a great prank, dude. Go around like a really shitty neighborhood, and you've got until someone holds you up for your wallet, and just give it to them, and it's just full of nothing but pennies. Oh, I left the house with my penny wallet. Fuck. Oh, that would be a great prank and mildly life endangering. What the hell was I talking about? Right. The thing with Jojolion, it might have been the worst part to read as it was coming out. Jojolion is very complicated. There's a lot going on. It's a mystery. It's a Twin Peaks style mystery with a lot of different characters. A lot of different characters. A lot of different individual motivations. Different groups of people. And a ton of different plot threads and little elements and things. And it's straight up, it's just easy to forget what's going on, or wait, what was that person's deal? And what were they? Why do they want this? Why do they do that again? Why are we? You know, it's really easy for that to happen with this part. And reading it month to month, I think, hindered some of my experience with it. I think now it's probably better to read all in one go. I actually expect I don't know. I might like it more on reread. Really, I'm not done with it. I'm about 30 something chapters in. I'm about almost 20%, 25% of the way through. And really what I remember was Jojolion is awesome until like halfway through. And then it gets weird. And I remember being like, okay, I don't really know what's going on. It's not bad. I just don't know really what's happening. And I'm curious if that feeling persists if on a reread. If I get that again. Rereading it has kind of made me appreciate a lot of things though. So number one, as soon as I started it, what I was not expecting was to be overcome with joy at seeing Josuke and Yasuho again. I realized how much I love these characters. I remember in like one of the later volumes, Araki's writer's note for the volume is something like, I just want Josuke and Yasuho to be happy. And I get it, man. I don't even write these characters, but I really do love them. I like Josuke a lot as a main character. I think he brings something kind of cool to the table as a JoJo. From the whole kind of like split nature of him, where half of him is, you know, he's a composite human being. He's made of two people. And even though he doesn't have their memories, he has elements of their personality. He inherits some stuff from Kira, like the early stuff. It's kind of funny because Kira is the character who's focused on early on. And then later, I think you get more of the Josefumi background and all that. But you have kind of like an anchoring with the Kira stuff with like, okay, you see the anchoring. Yeah. He's got this talent for knowing like the exact measurements of things based off of just sight alone, which is a little reference to something Kira does in part 4, that version of the character. And then also like his cruelty. I think what's kind of interesting about Josuke is that he has this kind of not quite, I wouldn't call it like a bipolarity. I would call it like he's got two different sides to him, where he can be the funniest, goofiest, silliest little guy, usually when he's with Yasuho, who kind of like, Yasuho kind of brings out like the best parts of him. But he's also capable of this like, just like real cruelty, or being like very grave and very serious when he wants to. Like the fucking scene with during the fun arc, when he literally, like, he's so fucking mad at Ojiro that he tells Yasuo to turn around so he can kick him in the ribs on the floor. Ojiro's like completely down, and he just gets like, shut the, he does it like 3 more times. And it's like really funny. He's and then he turns around and he's just like a silly little dude. I like that aspect of him. I like the fact that he doesn't, you know, it's kind of interesting because a lot of the JoJos before him were people who were very certain about who they were. Like Jonathan, Joseph, even Jotaro. Well, Jotaro's like he's kind of a wannabe. Jotaro's a little bit of a poser. Like, he's trying to be cool. It's sort of endearing in its own way. Jotaro is like, I feel like still has a strong sense of like what he wants to be like. Josuke, obviously. Giorno knows exactly who he is. Jolene, I think, has like a little bit of angst, but she's basically like, I think she's like pretty confident. Johnny is like the most transitional JoJo in the series. Like, he goes through a very intense character arc from beginning to end. And maybe that's just something that Araki was more into, starting with part 7, because Josuke is also like, his whole deal is he doesn't know who he is. And he spends so much of the story he's assuming that there's an answer that already exists. You know, who am I? He's just asking people who he is. And once he gets the sort of twist about his identity, he's so completely adrift, because now it's like, he was always assuming that he was just someone who had a whole life and just lost their memories, and he's just trying to get his memories back. And now he learns there's really no memories to get back, and he's got nothing to hold on to, and he kind of has to decide who he is for himself. And I think that's a good scene of him with Kay. I think it's probably one of the more famous visuals from part 8, the lemon and the tangerine. When she holds it up and it's the fused fruit. And he just totally breaks down. It's like a really interesting moment of vulnerability that you don't get from a lot of JoJo characters, or like main JoJos, where they're just totally without most JoJos. Araki said before that his idea of a hero was heavily inspired by things like spaghetti westerns and American action films. And in those kinds of stories, the main character is like total, like, they know exactly who they are and what's going on, you know? They've got a modus operandi, and they are going through the world as they will. And pretty much every JoJo operates like that. in their own way. And Josuke doesn't have that. And he's like the first one to have this scene of like, what do I even do? You know, what kind of a person am I? And I think that's cool. I forgot how much of like a little fucking freak honestly all the Higashikatas are. But Tsurugi, oh my god, what the fuck did Jobin do to raise that kid in such a bizarre way? It's such what a weirdo. People talk about Joshu being like a creep. I feel like Tsurugi's way worse. And I'm pretty sure by the end of the manga, he has like the highest kill count. He's 9. I think he kills like 7 people. He's like I think like the only person with more kills than him might be Josuke. Yeah. I'm at the point. I'm at the King Nothing, I Am a Rock arc. I'm basically done with it. And I remember my friend telling me that they said like, hey, yeah, it might be like a little slow, but around chapter 30 it really picks up. And you know, even on reread, I was like, the first 29 or so chapters, they're good. You know, it's fairly interesting. And then it hits this point. I remember being, whoa, okay, yeah, no. It's literally chapter 30. Like, you feel it when it drops, where the story really ratchets up as soon as the first actual rock human is introduced. Pretty sure. Yeah, he's the first one in the story. And you get a lot of new information, and it kind of feels like the story gets a ton of momentum. And I remember I'm like, oh man, I'm on the volume where it's every day is a summer vacation. I was like, fuck, Jobin gets introduced now. Jobin's like one of my favorite characters from Part 8. Maybe on reread he'll become like one of my favorite characters in general from the series. Oh god, I love Jobin. He's so cool. He's such an interesting antagonist for the series. I think one thing that is often, Araki's a really funny writer because there's sort of like two extremes to his writing style. On one hand, his writing can be very subtle. It can be really, really subtle, and you really have to dig into it to understand what he's trying to do. And on the other hand, it can be shockingly utilitarian. Like, I never quite understood what Pucci's entire deal. I basically understood what Pucci wanted and why, but hey, a Hamon Beat video that I think is great. It's called The Heaven Plan, about Part 6 and Pucci's motivations and everything. And I was like, wow, there's stuff that I did not pick up on about like his whole ideology and why he was attracted to Dio and his philosophy, and what made Pucci so receptive to the idea of heaven and fate and people knowing their destinies. And I was like, wow, Pucci's he's a really interesting character. And to be fair, it was I kind of missed it. I think I really missed a lot of that the first time that I read through Part 6. And then there's other moments in JoJo's where you think that something's important, like a character will show up. Like, I remember Carrera in Part 8, for instance, shows up, and oh my god, she's someone from Josuke's past, well, specifically Josefumi's past. And then, oh wow, is she going to come? No, she never comes back. She shows up for one chapter, or maybe 2, to give a little backstory about Josefumi, and then she's just gone. That's what she's there. She exists as like a plot device, and Araki will do this a lot with characters and scenes and little things. This character exists to convey some information to the viewer about something, and then they're just gone. They're just very expendable, and they don't really have that much long-term weight or importance or anything like that in the story. They were just there to fulfill a function. And I think that kind of might trip people up when you're trying, when you're reading into the story. The other thing that I've noticed, especially watching a lot of these debunking videos, is that the way that a lot of people think about the series is kind of interesting, because a lot of people think about JoJo's in terms of these as these separate, mostly self-contained story arcs. And yeah, they basically are, right? Like each part is basically a different story, you know? It's you could theoretically read almost every part on its own, you know, as for your first JoJo part, and not, I think you could grasp it. Obviously a lot of things would go over your head. Some are going to be easier than others. Part 6 I would not recommend that at all. It's like you need the most context for that part. But really, the way I've really come to understand it, and when you actually, and I think it's this weird kind of doublethink that I think even I had, that I've only realized this kind is a doublethink now that I've looked at the series as a whole through a lot of these videos. And it's that JoJo's is also like, really, it's one gigantic story that is told across a lot of different arcs. So people will say things, oh, this thing came up in part 8 and it never showed up again. You know, what happens with the walleyes? What were the bite marks? What was this and that? And I think back and I'm like, man, I mean, you know, there's a lot of things like that in this series. Like the stand arrows introduced in part 4, they're pretty prevalent. They're very prevalent. But you don't really get the major payoff for what the stand arrows are until part 5. You know, the stone mask introduced part 1. You don't get the payoff for the vampire stuff until you get all the way through part 2, and then all the way through part 3. There's a lot of stuff that comes up that's introduced in one part that, again, like Araki's writing, it can be very utilitarian. It shows up here and it performs a function. And then later on, it becomes, you know, in the next story arc. Excuse me. There's just a lot of things that don't get expanded on within the arc that they're introduced, but you don't really notice that because a lot of people experience JoJo's through just like watching the whole series in a go. So they experience it like one big story arc. But as soon as you hit the point, like as soon as you run up to the most recent material and you get into like, you know, stuff that is like I'm pretty sure stuff with the walleyes is going to come up eventually. Maybe, I don't know. There's a lot of stuff potentially that could come back in part 9. And you kind of have to look at each part as like, well, what's essential to the themes? I think that's a way that Araki writes a lot. I think he considers what are actually essential to the themes and the kind of story that he's trying to tell. I have to use the bathroom. Just had an insane bowel movement. Don't mind me. I'm not even sitting down right now. I'm making full use of my stupid standing desk add-on thing. It was like, dude, I don't even want to sit down. I don't think I can. I'm spiritually ready for that at this point. Anyway, I've read a lot of people who said, I've read multiple people online who say things like, yeah, you know, I don't know how much I was into part 8 until I reread it, and now I think it's like the best part, and I'm like, damn, really? Okay, so maybe okay, let's check back in like a week or two when I'm done with it, when I'm done rereading this thing, and we'll see how I fare, what I think of it. Typically, I feel like I form a pretty solid. There's things that I remember about, you know, having read through it as it was coming out. I caught up to part 8 for context for people who have read it already. I've caught up to it around Ozone Baby, like literally right at the start of Ozone Baby. So that's where I was. That's like 60%, 70% of the way through of a part that's like 110 goddamn chapters. So, you know, actually, where is Ozone Baby? Ozone Baby. What chapter is that? Jojolion yeah, literally chapter 70. So with 40 chapters to go. And I remember a couple things that a couple little gripes. And I'll get through them just to get them on the table before I finish the manga again. One of them was, as I said before, I kind of felt like Soft and Wet, Araki kind of ran out of ideas for it. And started just sort of relying on, the bubbles, did they do stuff for him? As opposed to the really cool aspect of the ability, which is you can it steals a physical property from something and stores it, and then it can release it, which is a really nifty idea. Another thing I remember being a little disappointed with is that a lot of the stand fights, especially in the latter half of the part, are with these long-range automatic type stands. So there's not a lot of interaction with the actual stand user. It's a lot of like running away, which is fine, but man, a lot of these are just like these ambient effects that get targeted onto the main characters, and then they have to figure out how to fight them. And yeah, that I found a little like, it's a little much. And I get like, okay, part of the themes of Part 8 is that, you know, there's bad things that happen no matter what. And that's, you know, the flow of calamity. And the characters have to figure out how to deal with that. How to move on, right? One thing that I was very surprised by, that, I don't know, my memory was jogged, was that Part 8 was written in 2011, or it started publication in 2011, and it takes place in that year. Most JoJo parts take place roughly in the year that they were written. Well, a lot of them do. And Part 8 is no different. And what else happened in 2011? Well, Japan had an earthquake that turned into a tsunami, that turned into a nuclear meltdown. And they referenced, like, it came out like 2 or 3 months after all this horrible string of tragedies happened to the country. And Araki works it into the plot, and you can tell he was thinking a lot already about the idea of just things happening, that like the level of chaos in the universe that you kind of can't control, because a lot of JoJo already concerns itself with fate. But they make several references. I think it falls off the further you get into the manga, just because time literally passed, you know, in real life. But yeah, I think to reflect that, a lot of the stands in Part 8 have these sort of big, just sort of like they cause chaos to happen, that's difficult to pinpoint the source of. Other things that I remember being a little disappointed with in Part 8. I don't know if I'm ever going to get over how Jobin gets treated. I'm really curious how I feel about Toru at the end, because I know he's a very non-traditional JoJo villain, and I think in the moment, as it was coming out, I was a little disappointed with him, and I thought he was a little bit lame and underwhelming. And I'm kind of curious if I feel the same way with the whole story in very recent memory. Because I've read some defenses of him, and I think, you know what, that's kind of compelling. I really kind of want to experience the story again to see if I feel the same way. Because his effect, his influence is technically in the story from around the beginning. Well, literally from the beginning. It's the reason the main character exists. But him as a character, also the fact that you didn't even know like who he really was, he just kind of shows up. I think it was a little awkward. I think it was, especially having to wait months in between chapters, I think it was a little bit awkward for people to adjust to, I remember this feeling of like, oh, is this guy wait, is it this guy really? Oh, okay. And in a very short amount of time, Araki kind of had to sell him as a major antagonist. I think maybe going into it knowing who he is could help. Because there'll be less confusion on my part over like, what is the purpose of this character? Oh, he's the main villain. Oh my god, he's like one of the strongest fucking characters in the series. Cool. All right. I don't know. I'm curious to see if I feel the effects of things, Araki's utilitarian writing. Where, hey, Stan gets introduced. Does it ever get used again? Like, Joshu, doesn't do shit for the last half of Part 8. He doesn't do diddly squat. I'm like, is that going to bother me? Is it going to bother? Because I think Nut King Call is actually a really cool ability. He just uses it, twice. It's like, oh, all right. Yeah, I remember being a little disappointed that there were a lot of abilities that I thought were genuinely very cool that got kind of sparse usage, not just soft and wet. There's aspects of Yasuho's, Paisley Park, that weren't used very often. I think she only used, the choose one thing or the other thing kind of, ability, once or maybe twice. A lot of people write this, they call these things plot holes. They're not plot holes. It's just Araki choosing not to write a certain thing into the story anymore. Because oftentimes when you look at other times that other situations that the character is in, it really doesn't make any sense for why that aspect of their ability would be useful or something. So it's less Araki forgetting that it exists and more so, oh, he just didn't write around it, or he didn't as a writer, he can choose to put the characters in situations where they use those abilities or those things come up. And he just kind of doesn't. And I think it's fair to criticize that aspect of his writing or those decisions. Yeah. In next week or the week after that, we'll see how I feel about it. Anything else I want to talk about? I don't know. Not really. This one might be a teensy-weensy bit short. I realized a lot of this was just a JoJo podcast. But, yeah. That's it. I'm rereading Jojolion in black and white, by the way, because I always read the official colored manga, because I was like, oh, it's in color. And it was also the most easily available translations were the colored manga. But when I started catching up to Part 8, you start running into the black and white, and I don't know, I got an affinity for it. I do love a lot of Araki's artwork, and I wanted to reread it in the original black and white, because I think that there's potentially I don't know, there's certain I don't know. I like reading the black. I feel like it's kind of meant to be read as a black and white manga, and the color thing is a fun little add-on. Some of the coloring choices can be disagreeable at times, and the way they choose to shade things can be a little bit garish, maybe. So I'm just choosing to read in the original black and white volume releases. So that's for the frame of reference. That's what I'm reading. Yeah, I'm basically done talking. Have a snappy new year, depending on when I upload this. I'm coming at you from... Oh yeah, I cleaned my room today because Kat's coming over. Coming at you from a newly cleaned room. She's going to walk in here and she's going to say some shit like, you said you cleaned it. I'm like, I did clean it. Anyway, go check out the most recent video. Bye.